on our last few remarks together. It's just been a wonderful time. I think that was such a moment of reflection for all of us where we remembered the bigger picture of what this world needs from us and a renewed spirit to go and help the world achieve it. I will now invite for our closing remarks Dr. Geetha Jayaram back to the stage, a representative from Rotary International, to share some closing thoughts as we continue our Rotary journey.
Good morning, you wonderful people. I am absolutely thrilled to have attended your district conference. I know, having been a district governor, how much work and elaborate preparation goes into hosting a conference of any kind, let alone a district conference. So I want to thank Catherine for inviting me, her husband Z for inviting us, and our aide Sonia and David for providing a remarkable experience in being here. Let me touch upon some issues that I noticed stood out in your district. I've been to many district conferences, I've been to many zone institutes, but your district conference stands out in many ways for the better, and I'll tell you what it is. Starting with meeting the Council of Governors at the Diva Den, I noticed, I love the term and I'm going to use it when we get people to our home. There were 20 past district governors. We never have 20 in a room. Not only did you have your past district governors, but you included people from other districts in that meeting. That was really a fellowship and advisory board with absolutely no contention. I'll tell you, there's a great advantage to living near Washington, D.C., and that is it's a beautiful city with extraordinary monuments and an extraordinary history. But the downside of living near D.C. is that being contentious has become part of the water that people drink every day. I want to thank Marg Van Herk, who drove us. She was patient, she waited, she shared her experience for peace and conflict resolution and her education in that area. The moving flag ceremony is something we always enjoy at every Rotary International meeting, and your young people bringing the flags up here sets the tone for unity and diversity. So there is a Rotary acronym I like to carry around in my mind called FLIDS, which is Fellowship, Leadership, Integrity, Diversity, and Service. Service being the big S. You have FLIDS in your district to infinity. It's unbelievable how much of it you presented and so many aspects of it in so many ways, with the young, with senior citizens, and frankly, in our district, there are a lot of PDGs who are literally, like Jay, my husband says, past, dead, and gone, even though they're there. But your past district governors played a very big role in this conference, which was very impressive. To give you an example, there used to be a district governor called Morris in our district. Lovely person. He is no longer here. But Morris was a good friend to us. When I was a very young woman in Rotary, he always would come up and talk to me and be very welcoming. Morris lost his wife, Betty, who had been married to him for like 60-some years, and he was unusually despondent and quiet after she passed away. One day I saw him bopping around on Main Street, and I said, Morris, you seemed all perked up and happy. What's going on? He had this young, attractive woman on his arm. And I said, so something seems to have changed. He said, oh, Doc, I'm just following your advice. I said, really? What advice was that? You said go out and get a hot mama and be happy. Be carefree. I said, Morris, that isn't what I said at all. I said, Morris happened to be a little hard of hearing. And I said, Morris, I didn't say that. I said, you have a heart murmur, be careful. So don't put away your PDGs. They are worth every moment you spend with them. I wanted to say what made an impact here. The core value of peace and friendship and treating each person, no matter what ethnic background they're from, with dignity is something that stood out throughout your conference. Hats off to you for that. We met one other couple here, Sylvia and Tony, who, like Jay and I, met in Rotaract. I'm so glad to see another Rotaract couple. Jay and I met in Rotaract. Our fathers were Rotarians and belonged to the oldest club in Bangalore, India, which has now split into 2 districts because there are so many members. Our first project was a water and sanitation project where we delivered pure drinking water to a village of 400 people called Bapagram. At that time, the young people here should know, we had no internet, we had no cell phones, we had rotary phones in some homes, that's it. Despite that, we got together, we were students from different universities, and we got together to build a pump house, to feed each other, to talk to the villagers. Jay wrote to the UK, to Oxfam to get a pump. We installed it. In 15 days, it was done. And my first Rotary aha moment was watching the faces of those villagers when pure drinking water came into their village. So don't put away those people who met in Rotaract, treasure them. I want to give a shout out to your audiovisual people. Mark and Laura DeVries, and Amber, who handled the mic so well. I've been to many, many conferences. I know AV is something that some people fool around with. AV is something that some people excel at. That is rare. You guys did an extraordinary job. Thanks to every single one of you who participated in that event. It was seamless, it was beautifully done, and you didn't even know who was in the background operating it. Your Rotary Exchange students, they too really stood apart to have that. Many of them so enthusiastic and so involved and so grateful to being here. That was a sight to see, including the young lady who was hypnotized and couldn't stand still. Before the hypnotist said, go get a mop, I was worried if I had to go and run and get one for her, Peace and conflict resolution has been a thread throughout the conference. You have raised for the foundation right here within a couple of days, a total, if I counted correctly, $15,000. That's incredible. People plan these things for years and can't do it correctly. You have extraordinarily generous people in your midst who give from their hearts and from their pockets. I learned something new about the curling competition. What a great way to celebrate international friendship. Your foundation report says you have 41 district grants and 11 global grants. And all of the grant-related activities for water and sanitation, the Aqua Box, Hand Up Initiative, the food insecurity, the bike project, every single one of them is with the mission of Rotary at heart, front and center. Your recognition of your outstanding members, that's that too, I think, is so needed because this is a volunteer organization. Nobody is paid to do this job. And not only do you do this job with your whole heart, but you're doing it with excellence. So thank you, all of you, for doing what Rotary wants you to do. Not too many districts do it at this level. And of course, there were a number of issues we talked about: membership, food insecurity, building service projects, water projects, and beyond that, enjoyment, dancing, music, and the hypnotist was just incredible. I mean, just the fact that every Rotarian was pointing at another Rotarian for the bad smell was something else, you know. I loved the tour of the Stratford Theatre Warehouse. We could have probably spent hours in there. It's incredible. And I learned something new about this. My son works in Hollywood as a screenwriter, and I will tell you there are numerous people who are sourced for materials, for the wardrobe, for many events. They all probably borrow from your theater district right here. Your auction to support polio, and the teaching, what Mary Jane talked about in terms of raising the level of education and literacy to excellence, is something not many people are doing with the kind of unity, camaraderie, and cohesive effort that you have in your district. Ms. Atima brought home the point that peace is something we need to do actively. It's not something that happens passively. And it takes a great deal of engagement, commitment, and persistence to promote resilience among people who've survived. In my district, while I was the first year as foundation chair, we invited the Ukraine ambassador to the United States to come to our foundation dinner. I want to thank my fellow Rotarians in my district for raising $1.5 million to give to Ukraine. We also gave another additional $500,000 for literacy among children who were living in war-torn areas where there was no access to school. So this is something we all feel considerably, painfully, constantly while we watch images of children being blown apart. It's incredible. How someone in this kind of world cannot commit to helping somebody else is beyond me. So I want to just close with 2 points. One is, there are blue zones in the world where people live to be 100 years. One of those zones is in Loma Linda, California. I haven't been there. And there's one in Japan, in Okinawa. Those people practice what is called, among other factors, ikigai. The term ikigai means understanding the purpose of life. So the purpose of life is understood by Rotarians like yourselves. It goes beyond accumulating wealth and having a good time. It goes to committing yourself to a community of brothers and sisters across the world. So you will all most likely live to be 100 years each. I want to end with a poem written by Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore of India. And it's titled, Where the Mind is Without Fear. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. Where knowledge is free. Where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Where words come out from the depth of truth. Where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection. Where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit. Where the mind is led forward by thee, into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, Let our countries awake. Thank you very much.